you. Good morning. We've already been set up so beautifully by the opening affirmation, the opening statement, because really what I'm here to talk about today is the power of a belief. And I'm going to speak a little bit about that through a story, because I want to let you know a little bit of the before, a little bit of the during, and a little bit of the after. And what I've learned is that one belief can either make you or break you. That is definitely the story of my life. And another thing I learned is that refusing to have compassion can keep you stuck in misery for decades. If I were to title my talk, I would say it is to uncover your power through compassion and updated beliefs. That is my story. I'd like to talk in particular about one belief that had a profound effect on my life and continues to this day. And that belief is, no one is there for me. No one has my back. Now, this is a belief that I adopted at such an early age before I even understood anything about beliefs or anything about the consequences of beliefs. But nonetheless, it worked just the same. And I had so many stories that reinforced this belief for me. My father separated from my mother when I was less than 2 years old. And when he left, my belief was formed. No one's there for me. No one has my back. When my mother was a single parent, raising me by herself, and I was in many ways taking care of myself, my belief came even stronger. No one is there for me. No one has my back. When my mother remarried and I had my first stepfather, it was a tumultuous relationship. My mother was still a teenager. She was a very young person. And when that man twisted my arm hard enough to break it, my belief became once again solidified. No one is there for me. No one has my back. This is at a time when, well, I mean, even to this day, who would like to talk about that as part of their family history? But at that time, there was no support provided. Instead, there were a lot of lies and a lot of cover-ups, which I didn't understand at a very small age that I was, couldn't comprehend that. Those stories continued on and on throughout my life. I have a stepfather right now who is doing time at a Atascadero State Prison under the Sexually Violent Predator Act. It wasn't hard for me to believe that no one is there for me and no one has my back. It seemed, as a matter of fact, that that was the belief I needed to have almost in order to survive. And as time went on, I was very cautious. And even those who would try to be there for me or who would try to have my back, I wouldn't trust them. I wouldn't believe them. I would push them away. And many times before they could get around to having my back or being there for me, I was already gone. Today I'm here to tell a story about transformation, and I want to give you some examples of how and why that transformation took place. But before I go to that, I want to tell you some of the consequences of holding this belief, because I know I'm not alone in this. See, I teach at Long Beach City College, as Reverend Gigi mentioned, and I teach in the Human Services Department, which means that my students are going into social work, they're going into working with people who have drug and alcohol problems, they're going and working with people in prisons, they're going and working with foster youth. So the story that I just told you is in no way outrageous or outstanding or even abnormal in our work that we do. This is something that is very pervasive in certain aspects of our society, and you can't tell by looking at people. I came to New Thought over 20 years ago, and I loved the philosophy, change your thinking, change your life, and I did it right away. But I didn't at that time understand anything about those unconscious beliefs. So in some ways, there felt like there were times where I was fighting against myself. There was the very, very strong belief that says there's no one there for me, no one has my back. And then these newly founded beliefs that I had just learned about. And it took a while for me to internalize that. It took a while for me to let that in. In the middle stages of my life, I wanted so much for someone to be there for me, to have my back. I knew I needed it. I knew I wasn't doing that great of a job on my own. But I had no idea how I would go about getting that support. And sometimes I wanted it and needed it so bad that I got it from people who really couldn't be trusted. So once again, my story got stronger. No one's there for me. No one has my back. I trusted the wrong people. Why? Because I was desperate. That's the honest to God truth. I was desperate by that point. I had lived a life of feeling so alone and so lonely and so over-responsible for everybody that when somebody came along and said they were going to make it easier for me and that they loved me just the way I was and that they were going to help me out, well, of course that sounded great. But I didn't always know that it was a lie. So there were years of people-pleasing. There were years of addiction. There were years of being stuck in the victim mode. There were years of codependency. There were years of over-responsibility. There were years of resentment. And there were more and more years of no one's there for me. No one has my back. Well, something very dramatic happened in my recent past that not only caused me to challenge this belief, but literally transform it and break free from it. It came about in a very unexpected way. Not the way that you would expect me to talk about a transformation, but it started with a cancer diagnosis. October 2013. Very recent history, right? Just happened. I went to the dermatologist to have a mole removed. That's the only reason I was going, because it was bothering me. And guess where it was? On my back. So I had the mole removed, and it was taken to the lab, and I got a call from the doctor a few days later. You have melanoma. Knowing what I know about science of mind, what I've learned already up to this point after 25 years, I immediately rejected the diagnosis on an internal spiritual level. And I immediately moved into prayer, and I immediately reached out to those people who I knew I could trust to handle this information correctly. And one of those people was Aman, by the way. We began immediately with what's called healing school, and we began immediately with focusing on healing. That's it, and that's all. And at the same time, I went through the steps that were recommended by the doctor. And I took a step, and I checked in, and I took another step, and I checked in. And ultimately, I went through a series of doctor's appointments and treatments. But I want to tell you about some of the transformation that took place in a somewhat unexpected way. One of the treatments took place at UCI Medical Center. When I needed to go to the oncologist, I had to go to UCI Medical Center. But let me back up a little bit before I get to that. When I knew that I was having this upcoming appointment at UCI Medical Center, my friend Parveen called me. Parveen is a friend, but not a tight buddy. We don't hang out frequently. We only call each other on the phone every once in a while, but we have a fond feeling for each other. We enjoy each other's company, and we're friends. She called me right when all of this happened. In fact, a number of people just seemed to pop up out of nowhere, calling me for one reason, and yet something else came out of it. This is one of those examples. She calls me and to talk to me about something completely unrelated. She has no idea that I've been diagnosed, anything. Long story short, I tell her. She says, when is your appointment? I tell her. She insists, I am taking you to the doctor. No ifs, ands, or buts. I am going with you. Now, I didn't ask her, but she had my back. She was there for me. I did not ask her. She insisted that she is coming with me. Now, Parveen is from Iran, and in Iran, she was a medical doctor. So this was part of the reason why I felt comfortable speaking to her. I also felt comfortable because she's a very spiritual-minded person, and I knew she would handle it correctly. In other words, she wouldn't get into a fear spiral with me. She wouldn't get into doom and gloom with me. She wouldn't start bawling her eyes out. She would just handle it. So we go and we get in the car and we drive to the appointment. I didn't understand until I arrived at the appointment at UCI Medical Center the history I had with that exact geographic location. And the history that I had of a very, very sensitive time. I basically had gone through a sexual assault, and I was taken to that hospital for treatment, and I wasn't able to receive the treatment. But needless to say, there was a lot of trauma involved with that, okay? And that moment when I went for that appointment, I was able to heal that trauma. Not only that, I have to fast forward a little bit because there's so many details to tell, but ultimately, bottom line, the end result is I don't have cancer. I do not have cancer. Cancer did not spread. I do not have cancer. It's done. So where I'm at right now is just knowing that every situation that comes into my life is an opportunity for healing. Every situation that comes into my life and every bit of information that I receive is an opportunity. And although I didn't understand how to seize that opportunity when I was a small child, I do understand how to seize it now. And so I am here, basically. I know that my time is up, so I will wrap it up. But I do want to end by saying I did uncover my power through compassion and updated beliefs. I learned how to have compassion for myself during those troubled and troubling times, and to also update to where I am today and what I have today, and to know that even though for decades I believed that no one was there for me and no one had my back, it just isn't true. My belief has been updated, and even though it's only been a few months that this process has happened, people are showing up. Opportunities are showing up. Me being here is just one example, right? Here I am. Aman being here, Sasha being here with me. People are here to support me. People are here to help me. And the same applies to all of us. Not only that, of course, God is everywhere. But my belief can block even God out of my life. So today I am here to update my belief. God is there for me. God has my back. God is there for you. God has your back. And so it is.